we'll make sure we give everybody an extra couple minutes. We have become a nation or world of recordings and Zoom meetings and WebEx meetings. And it seems like you go from one to the next. I don't know if that's the same for everybody else, but that means we used to have time to go down the hallway. We don't give ourselves that time anymore. We're like, wait, give me a break. So we'll give everybody a few minutes. Everybody's starting to hop on here. I am so excited about who we have. I love this lady to death. So I can't wait to introduce her and have all of you meet her. So hello, Holly, Chris, Nate. Awesome. Yes, that's what I agree, Nate. I agree. Okay, so I'm just going to make sure that I have what I was going to actually say about Laura once we get everybody on here. So, and I know people tend to pop on about 5-10 minutes afterwards, so we'll give everybody a few more minutes, and can't wait. But we know the people who are here. Now, if you're listening to this recording, of course, we appreciate you too. And that's the cool thing about podcasts. And actually, Laura is the one that taught me that podcasts have a wing time. So you actually, and you'll hear about that today, that the cool thing about this versus like TV, it actually lasts longer. Your presence, your advertising benefit, if you will, it lasts much longer than a traditional magazine or other type of advertising, I guess, right, Laura? Is that right? Did I get it right?
Yeah, other media as a whole, exactly.
Yeah, awesome. So our wing time, I know we have good wing time. Well, wonderful, wonderful. I am going to, before there's more people hopping on here. So while we do that, everybody, I just want to let you know that some of the upgrades to the Soar audio app have been done. If you haven't downloaded it yet, and go to my.soar.com, get registered on there, then download the app, and Coach Uplift Weekly will be on there like this afternoon. It automatically uploads. So we are so excited about some what's happening. Also, I know a lot of you have already downloaded it, and I've been watching the content get uploaded. So some good things are coming in the first quarter. I just got off an exciting call this morning with a partnership. So which means we will be bringing listeners to the app. And so if you have not downloaded it and uploaded your own content, just go there and start listening. I mean, it's definitely worth it. And then keep in mind, the bigger picture is we'll be able to ask Alexa or Google about learning and development. And I'll even be able to say, probably in the next, but by the end of this year anyway, say, Alexa, what did 𝗟RA Power say on her podcast? And this will just start to run. Exciting stuff. So we're glad you're here. With that, let's go ahead and get started. I'm so excited to introduce this guest. I have known Laura. Actually, we just met last year. Well, I can say last year now. Last year, at the end of September, we were on a conference together, and both of us were looking for ways to improve and develop. And we ended up doing a little mastermind group afterwards, and doing that together with some other people. And when she presented this presentation, I thought, you know what? The fact that we're encouraging coaches to do podcasts, the fact that we have coaches that already have podcasts, and we're doing it with our Soar audio suite for coaches, this makes so much sense that she teach you how to become a guest on a podcast, what you could do to start your own podcast, and why they work, period. So without further ado, I'm just going to read this, Laura, and then you can tell everybody more about yourself. But great. Laura is the host of a popular film and television podcast, and it's called Behind the Scenes with 𝗟RA Powers. It's one of the top 100 podcasts on Apple Podcasts. It's Healing Powers Podcast. That's the top 100. Or are they both?
They both have been, yeah. They go in and out, but yeah, they both. I host 3 top 100 podcasts. I don't talk about all of them all the time, but yeah.
Oh my gosh. She's also been featured on several television channels and networks, including BuzzFeed, NBC, ABC, CBS, Fox, the CW, the Jet Set, and my favorite though is Will Ferrell interviewed her on the Ron Burgundy Podcast. And if you guys don't know, you don't just get on the Ron Burgundy Podcast. You better bring it if you're going to be on the Ron Burgundy Podcast. So I am so excited that she's going to be teaching all of you today. And if you're listening to this recording, you're going to probably want to stop and take some notes or go back and remember the main nuggets, if you will, because it's going to help you that much. So Miss Laura, what did I miss? Tell everybody else maybe where you live, what do you do, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I'm most known as a psychic and a celebrity psychic. So I, work with celebrities, millionaires, billionaires, everyday people as well. And I'm also a creative entrepreneur. So growing up, I was very creative. And while I was building my psychic business, I was actually making my living as an actress. But as my psychic business expanded, I made so much more money doing that. So I kind of shifted my focus as a money-making venture to this. And one of the first things I did was start a podcast. So I'll be talking about that as I get into the presentation.
Wonderful. So, and she knows that this is mainly who we typically watch this or listen to this, Laura, as we discuss. It's coaches. They've been coaches. So many of them, their heart is in coaching. They want to go coach. And then how do you get press? How do you get PR when you're trying not to be braggadocious? And maybe you don't have time or don't have the interest in actually running a podcast. How can they become a guest on a podcast? And we have team leaders. We do have managers who coach. And so they come here for tips as well. So with that said, I think you actually have a presentation. If you want to go ahead and take control and share your screen or whatever it is you do your thing, girlfriend.
All right, I'll dive right in. And yeah, I think for coaches or anyone who provides products and services, especially service-based businesses, podcasting is incredible and podcast guesting is incredible. So here we go. Let me share my screen.
And while she's doing that, go ahead and say hi, where you're from, who are you, in the chat. This will be like we always are, what we always do, that go ahead and ask questions. I'll make sure I check it out every once in a while. And she would love to know what you do and where you're from, and I'll watch it. Carolyn from San Diego is in here in the house. I think I saw Tammy. I know where she's at. She's Omaha, Nebraska. There it is. Hi, Tammy. Holly's from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Hey, guys. So you've got people on here from everywhere.
Amazing. All right. Well, I'm just going to dive into my presentation, and there'll be time afterwards for questions. So as mentioned, I'm 𝗟R𝘂𝗏𝗆𝗏. I actually just recently started adding my middle name, so you might see me in various places as Laura Michelle Powers, and simply that's because there's a lot of Laura Powers out there. So it's a way to separate myself and make sure that everyone knows who I am. And I am most known as a psychic. I'm a podcast host and producer. I host 6 podcasts. And one of the reasons is that once I started podcasting, I realized how amazing it was and felt that it was a wonderful thing to do to expand into different areas. So I'm an author, a speaker, and a coach, and I have 8 books. Most of my books are about the psychic realm, but my last book, Rock Your Podcast, is all about podcasting. And really felt actually to release that during the year of the pandemic, because I know what amazing tool, especially for online business, that hosting a podcast has benefits for. And so felt like during this time that it was a really important book to release. And then television correspondent and host. I've been doing television now for several years, and it's one of my passions. So I'll just give some background on my story and how and why I got into podcasting. So during the recession, I basically had my life come crashing down. So I was working in government and politics, and I'd moved to Seattle with my husband at the time, now my ex-husband. And, I had lived my life very analytically and done all the things I thought I should do. And then just basically everything fell apart. I became sick. I was unemployed when my contract position with the University of Washington ended, right when the recession hit, and I just couldn't find a job. My marriage fell apart. I was depressed. I just felt pretty hopeless. And I went to a psychic to try to get some guidance, and she said he needed to open back up. And so I started taking psychic classes and totally changed my life direction. And the economy was terrible. I couldn't find a job. I'd never been in a position where I was unemployed in my whole life. And I searched for about 6 months. I couldn't find anything. I actually went and lived abroad in China because I could find a job there for a year. And then I came back and it was like, okay, I need to just start something because I'm not getting a traditional job in the United States in the way that I want to. And I was really guided to start a podcast. And this is really interesting because I was not even a podcast listener at this point, but there was just something about podcasting which was really compelling for me. So I learned some tech and I started Healing Powers podcast, which is on Mind, Body, Spirit. And during that transition time, after I left my marriage and started investigating into the psychic realm and alternative health, I had this really incredible healing journey. And I basically wanted to share those tools and resources with other people that helped me transform my health and my life. I didn't consider myself an expert. I was completely new in this area. So I was very nervous about putting myself out there. And I didn't feel like I personally had anything to share yet in terms of like being an expert, but I knew people that were. So I started as an interview format show, interviewing people that I knew. And then as I developed my business, I started to kind of take ownership of myself as an expert and that I knew, and I started to share. So a lot of you who already are experts or are known in your area, you were already ahead of the game compared to where I was at that time, because I didn't feel like I knew anything or had anything to share yet. But if you do, then you can take off even more quickly in terms of podcasting. So the tips I will help you share help me book appearances on all of these media platforms. Just like Shari mentioned, all the big, television networks here in the United States. I've been on radio, I've been in magazines, and then some really big ones that were mentioned, like Ron Burgundy Podcast, BuzzFeed, etc. As we mentioned, this one is a big one. This is one that, you don't even really pitch to this one. You have to be invited on. And I checked with the producer who invited me on the show about their process because I was really curious. I knew that this was going to be something that was hard to get an invitation to. And they said they went on my website and checked me out for several hours before they even extended an invitation. And what helped me with this was that I've been podcasting for years. So I was familiar with podcasting. I've been a guest on television and on podcasts. You could see it from my website. And so they knew that when I got in the room that I would be fine, because this is a podcast that's not scripted. You're just on the spot. And, there's like 8 people in the room recording you, and you have to just be on and go. So I'm going to show you a sample reel just to give you a sense of what I've done, but also because a reel is a very important tool for you to book appearances for yourself. I'm here today to give some readings to people and help them understand about angels.
Do you have crystals at all? Do you use crystals? And if you do you have any that I could trip balls on?
Okay, well, first of all, I don't think crystals and tripping balls are connected, but I do believe that crystals can be very powerful. I don't actively use them in my work, no.
I'm Laura Powers. I'm a psychic medium and angel channeler.
Author, psychic, host, and traveler, Laura Powers.
A psychic medium.
What are some other places that you love to visit that have a supernatural feel to them?
Sure. So London and Paris are two cities where I've actually hosted paranormal tours.
What's happened to you over there?
Connected with the spirit of Jack the Ripper. That was really fascinating. Connected with a lot of spirits, did some energy clearing, and just told the people that were on the tour what I was sensing. I'm here today to give just a brief mention of the reel. It should be, in my opinion, about a minute long. You can also have a longer one if you want to show like more in depth. But generally speaking, people have short attention spans. They want to get a sense of you, what you've been on, how you are on camera. And the great thing about a reel is that you can start even with podcasts. So I'm going to show you like a more in-depth one of what they did for Ron Burgundy. The reason I'm showing this to you is how this is for a podcast. We were not recorded on video. So even if you're just on podcast, you can start to create these little clips for yourself that you can use for promotional tools, either on your website, on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube, and then you can basically upgrade as you go. So you see how they have our script.
Do you have crystals at all? Do you use crystals? And if you do you have any that I could trip balls on?
Okay, well, first of all, I don't think crystals and tripping balls are connected, but I do believe that crystals can be very powerful. I don't actively use them
Yeah.
in my work, no.
Okay.
Because I bought some at the Pasadena swap meet,
Mm-hmm.
and I carry a satchel
Yeah.
with me of crystals.
I know you took them to Coachella
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah. Yeah, I've handed them out. How close have you worked with Whoopi Goldberg?
So just sharing that you can create that for yourself, even with small podcasts. And then you have a video that you can share and that will really help promote you in your work. So why media as a whole is important is it builds trust and credibility. It creates expert status, social proof. People find you that way and it makes you money. And just to give people some context for, the various types of media that I've done. So you get a big podcast or show like Will Ferrell's show, and I actually have booked clients from that. I've had people say, like, if you're good enough for Will Ferrell, you're good enough for me, and things like that. But really, for the most part, what it does is build that credibility. But smaller media that are more targeted and focused often have actually a much bigger impact on the money-making piece. So there's like one small podcast that I've been on that's targeted to my niche, and I've had $50,000 of revenue that I can tie just to that one appearance. And it continues over several years. Like I still get bookings from that podcast. And then also, that's just my example. So I'm teaching a 9-week podcasting course, and one of my guest expert panelists, she has a one podcast appearance where she's booked $200,000 of revenue from it. So it can be very beneficial because it's so targeted, and it's different than like television or radio where you have like a large group of listeners that maybe only a very small percentage of that are in your area of interest. Whereas with podcasts, people search and listen to podcasts that are specifically what they're interested in. So you have a much higher likelihood of conversion.
You know what? I'm thinking about this, Laura.
Yeah.
I did, when I first went into coaching back in 2011, I got asked to be on a podcast to teach people how to get into corporations as coaches. And because I knew the HR system, I knew how it works.
Right.
And so I did that. And one of my very first clients, and she actually has her own television show right now, and I signed an NDA, so I can't say who it is. She reached out to me because she listened to that podcast and said, I need help getting my coaching into corporations. And then she's evolved since then. But now I never even really thought about that. And, that was from coaching. And I just did it to help somebody out. And I really didn't expect anything from it, to be quite honest. So I think that's what you're talking about, right? Like, as coaches, we can, be a guest, and you never know who is going to listen to specifically what that you offer and what they're looking for.
Absolutely. And what Shari was referencing in the beginning of the call is that podcasts have what's called a long tail, which means people will find a podcast and they'll listen to it and binge frequently, very much like Netflix. They'll listen to it, and the way that the podcast players frequently operate, depending on the player, is you find an episode, you listen, and it automatically starts playing the next episode, and it'll save it for you and like save where you are in terms of your progress. So people will frequently discover my podcast and they will listen to all 10 years of episodes. I've been podcasting for 10 years now, whereas that's not the case with YouTube. You listen to one YouTube video or watch one YouTube video, and like enough of them want to pop up, underneath, but it's often from a different creator, and so you just easily get like off track. And then with Instagram or Facebook, for example, it has a shelf life of maybe like a week or two, generally speaking, because it just gets lost in the feed. So the way that podcasting is structured, you get people that listen for like old content. And so you just literally never know, when someone's going to reach out to you from something you recorded even years ago. So that one podcast where I can tie 𝗪c𝗖𝗍𝗄𝗃 revenue to, I didn't get any revenue from it for about 2 years. And then suddenly I got a referral from that. And it was, interestingly, it was the host. So podcast hosts are incredible connectors that connected me with one of her clients. And then that client connected me with others, and that client has become a really solid regular client. So yeah, it's important that when you podcast, you may get some immediate response, but also just know it can come back to you, that return on investment can come back to you like for multiple years.
And I'm going to just stick in here. That's why the
Yeah.
Soar audio app is so powerful, because people won't watch a video twice, but they will listen again. So
That's so true.
that's awesome.
Yeah, I think I need to learn more about Soar, but I feel like there's so many ways that these really work together.
Yes.
I just want to share my first media coverage because it's very humble, but at the same time, you can get media coverage right away, regardless of where you are, if you've never had anything. So I do think intuition is important in terms of booking media and putting yourself out there. But I was literally brand new in my business, guys, and I'd asked, for universal help to get the word out there. My background is in government and politics, so I really had no expertise in this area. It was out of left field, for people that knew me. But I just got this intuitive message to do readings at a local coffee shop, and I just put up a flyer in the window. And the first day I was scheduled to do readings, the managing editor of the local newspaper asked if he could write a story about me. And 2 days later, it was in the regional newspaper. So this is my first story. And, it's just a local newspaper. And in a sense, it's not a big deal. But because I had that, once you have some media coverage, even if it's just a podcast, it's so much easier to get other bookings because you have a track record and a context, and you can show that on social media, and you can list it on your website. Whatever you have, even if you think it's humble or whatever, make sure it's clear on your website. So if you go to my website, 𝗟𝘂𝗿𝗀𝗋.net, which is my main website, you can see, I have all those logos. Immediately when you get on the website, you're like, oh, this woman's been featured. And it really helps people with that credibility and understanding your expertise. So I recommend using intuition to book, because when you do that, you can go much more quickly to develop what you did. I mean, I built the business very quickly during a recession as a psychic, which is if you're not familiar with psychics, most of them make, I would say, $10K or less a year. And I have a multiple six-figure business now, grew very quickly, and I expect to break 7 figures this year. So whatever coach niche or whatever you do, it's really possible to do this quickly if you follow some of these things. So in terms of intuition, it helps you do it faster. Logic often says you need to do all these extra steps, but if you use your intuition, you can just jump right in.
In other words, trust your gut, right? Trust your gut. Do it. Don't talk yourself out of it.
Yes. And when you get that inclination to, take a class, contact a certain person, do a thing, listen to it, because a lot of times the things that we're guided to do may not even have a direct connection with what we think we're trying to bring in. So it's important to learn that. Okay, ways intuition works, in case you're not familiar, thoughts that pop in your head, you keep getting this feeling or idea that you just can't shake. It keeps coming in. Repeated references to people, places, or things, whether that's a book, a person, of course, whatever that is. Strong urgent inclination to do something, and a feeling that won't go away. So, most of us are highly trained to be analytical, and there's an important aspect of that. But in my experience, when you listen to that intuitive side, that's when things can develop much more easily for you and quickly as well. So now I'm going to get into the more practical hands-on stuff. So there's a lot of resources for getting booked in media, and some of them are more, complex, and some are simpler. One is called Help a Reporter Out, and it's 𝗟R𝘂 for short. So most people just refer to the platform as 𝗟R𝘂. And you can subscribe to daily emails looking for sources on particular topics. So basically, it's a platform that connects media and sources. And this is great because as someone who is also media and someone who's a source, I can really understand, as a media person, you get bombarded by emails and people trying to, get on your show or get on your platform. So this provides a way that you can request bookings without getting overwhelmed with requests. So the reporters or source or media members will put a source request out, and then you can sign up as a source, and you can get emails, and you can say, I want it one a day, several times a day, morning and afternoon, etc. And you choose the areas of interest. So it could be lifestyle, it could be, health, it could be travel, whatever that is for you. They have a whole bunch of different categories, and then you get the emails, and then you respond via email, but it's going through the platform. So that person gets it through the platform. So a couple of tips in terms of using 𝗟R𝘂. I definitely recommend subscribing for the updates that you get daily. And then do just the areas that you are interested in so you don't get bombarded with lots of extra emails. and respond quickly, because they often get so many responses. And if you wait too long, they've probably already selected someone. So it's worth the time. So in my case, I responded to several hero requests, and one of them was for a television show. And you saw some clips of me on that television show, The Jet Set. And I pitched for travel, because I normally travel a lot when we're not in pandemic time. And then they liked me and they learned I was a psychic, and they're like, oh, we should have you back to talk about being a psychic. And this is another important thing, is that when you are source, when you're on a podcast or any kind of media, it really is about developing relationships, and you just never know what's going to come out of that. So be kind, be professional, also let them know that you're open and interested in doing more, because they may not assume that. And then after I was on their show several times, I actually became a correspondent. So I started to produce television segments for them in different places. I mean, so that was an incredible door opener that came from that one hero pitch that I did.
One of my very first articles was through Hero.
Yeah, it's
they
amazing.
hooked me up.
It's amazing. And I think, if you don't get a response, or if you don't get a yes, don't take it personally. I would say and that's for any pitching that you do, don't take it personally. Learn how to pitch better, keep being positive, put it out there. And as someone who gets pitched, I just want to say, don't feel badly if you don't get a response. I literally get, dozens to sometimes even more emails a day, and I already have a busy schedule. So sometimes if it's just I just don't have the bandwidth to respond. So just don't take it personally. And then here's some others that are specifically for podcasting. 𝗟𝘂𝗿𝗀.com. That's one where you can get guests for your show if you have a show. And there's like big people like 𝗕ecie𝗱𝗿𝗀𝗿, the boxer is on there. If you want to, you have to pay him, but still they'll come on your show for a certain amount of money. And then you can create your own guest posting for yourself if you want to be on shows. Matchmaker.fm is another one. Podcastguest.com is a weekly email that lists people that are looking to be on shows at the top, as well as shows that are looking for guests. So, just like Hero, you can be on both sides of that to be a source or to get guests. And there's podmatch.com. And by the way, this is such a growing sector. Like within the last few years, podcasts has exploded. So there's more and more platforms being booked all the time. Knowing and connecting with other podcasters is really powerful. Asking previous hosts if they have any suggestions. And then there's some incredible Facebook groups just for podcast bookings. So these are so easy. If you just want to start here, I guarantee you'll get some bookings. So podcast guest collaboration, podcast guest connection are two separate groups. And basically you just have to hashtag be a guest or find a guest, and then list whatever you're pitching or whatever you're an expert on or you can talk about. And it's so easy. You just do a post and then use the hashtag, and immediately people respond. It's incredible. Like I literally could probably have as many guest spots as I want to in terms of myself as a guest. And I've certainly booked people on my show, and it's very easy and fast. That's one of the reasons I like it. So in my case, I probably guess on an average of say 4 to 5 podcasts a week, just because I know how effective it is as a business builder. But definitely I recommend doing one a week at least. And the more you do it, probably the more you'll like it and the more you'll want to do. And then I just started a new group called Rock Your Podcast, and that's the same name as my book. So if you want to join that group, you're welcome to. We'll do guest opening spots there, as well as just sharing tools and resources. And then She Podcast, that's for women and those who identify as women specifically. So those are just a few. There's lots of other Facebook groups that I definitely recommend joining some groups and participating that way. In my opinion, as a podcast host, one of the best ways to get booked is to host your own podcast. There are several reasons for that. One, you have your own platform. So people automatically start to think of you as someone they want to connect with, as a guest. I think of you as an expert. And also podcasting is incredible for networking. Podcasters are influencers, right? So if you become labeled as an influencer, and then it's also a lot easier to book yourself on shows if you have a show, because you can just be like, hey, do you want to do a guest swap? And it's a win-win, because that person gets a guest, you get a guest, you're each exposed to each other's audience. And also podcasters make great guests because they're familiar with the platform. So when you host a podcast, you get really good at being on the fly, you get experience on audio, on camera. And one of the things that's happening a lot with podcasters now is it used to be audio only, But most podcasts, or a lot of podcasters now, are doing audio and then they're recording it as video and they're releasing it also on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, etc., or even doing it where it's a live stream and then they're using the recording to post as a podcast. So it can be audio or it can be audio and video, and they're both wonderful, and it's just a wonderful way to get the word out there. Getting on-air experience, as I said, is wonderful. You become labeled as an influencer. And then this is a big one. This last one is, as you receive pitches, you get to know better how to pitch because you see what it's like to be on the receiving end. So I think I'm such a better pitcher because I have people pitch me and I'm like, oh, that's terrible. I know not to do that thing that person just did. So here's some podcasting basics. I feel like a lot of people, they tend to focus on like tech and get really overwhelmed with what you feel like you would need to host a podcast, but it is so basic, you guys. If you can do Zoom, then you can host a podcast. So what you need is content, meaning audio. You can do the video if you want as well, but even just the audio is amazing. And you can do that through Zoom. Some people use Skype. I prefer Zoom personally, but there's all these other platforms you can use. There's a lot of free or low cost options. And it's not that hard. Then you just need a podcast hosting platform. And there's even free ones, like Anchor is free. And then there's some with more bells and whistles in terms of the demographics.
Soar Audio is free.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
I should add that to my list.
You need to add that to your list because it really just came out this year. And our coaches with their platform, they get Zoom integration. It's going to be fully Zoom Pro in like 10 days. And it automatically goes into their library. They don't have to download it.
Oh, that's so great.
We need to hook you up, Laura.
Yeah, amazing. I love that. Yeah, and that's the thing, because this is such a growing industry that there's new incredible things popping up all the time. And so, yeah, whether you Soar or one of these other platforms, it's really easy. I mean, when I started podcasting 10 years ago, guys, it was so hard. I was not a tech person, and it was a platform at that time that was for like mostly nerdy white tech guys. And so I wasn't in that category, and I was still able to figure it out. And now it's just like super easy by comparison. And then you need distribution. Distribution is free. A lot of the hosting platforms will get you linked in to these distribution companies very easily. So distribution would be like Apple Podcasts. That's still the number one. About 70% of podcast listens are still thought to be on Apple Podcasts, but there's obviously Spotify, there's Stitcher, Castbox. There's so many now. And then you need an audio editor. And even then you don't technically, there's a lot of people that just literally upload whatever is, their full recording. So if editing is a pain point for you, you can technically skip it if you want to. One thing I want to bring up about podcasting as a whole that I think is really important is that there's a lot of censorship happening with people. Like, I don't know about you, but I'm hearing people where they're losing their Facebook pages, or they're being shut off of Instagram or whatever. And sometimes they don't even know why. Like, I've seen coaches and people who run their businesses where they're literally, I don't even know why. They just shut me down and told me that I was shut out of the platform. And that's going to be very difficult for them to do if you're a podcaster, because there's all these different hosting companies, there's all these different distribution platforms. So even if, let's say, Apple Podcasts decide they're going to shut you down, which probably isn't going to happen, but you can just direct your listeners to one of these other platforms. So I think that's really important in this age of potential censorship, to know that, you're going to be able to keep your content on platform wherever you are. So I'm going to talk a little bit about pitching and some pitching do's. I definitely recommend, when you're pitching, to mention anything that sets you apart, whether you've won awards, who you've worked with, how many people you connect with, charts, whatever, is going to give people a sense of you. Definitely use a professional pic. It's amazing to me how many people will just use an iPhone pic or something. Even though those are pretty good, you can really tell when someone is using a professional photo. Tell them what you can offer them. A lot of pitching people are sharing like what they need, what they want, and then that just doesn't resonate well when you have a show. You're like, okay, but what's in it for me and my audience? Like, that's where you're coming from as a host. So if there's something that you can offer for them, whether that's sharing on social media, telling them how many people you have as followers, or that how many newsletter subscribers you have, that you're willing to repost it to your podcast if you have a podcast. All of these things are going to make you more appealing to that host. Definitely research their show, make sure it's a fit. Don't pitch just everyone randomly. And also, I think it's helpful to tell them how you discover the show, why you're a fan, etc. Pitching don'ts, make it all about you. I mean, I literally get so many pitches where I'm like, okay, that's great, but like, why would I want to talk to you? Like, it's, you know, it's normal to think about it from your perspective, but you have to remember that they're making the decision based on what they want and need. So that needs to be really clear. Don't pitch a show without knowing the show, making sure it's a fit. Make sure you have professional promo material, so photo, you know, have a good bio that's clean and clear. A one sheet is something I really recommend, which has your bio, you know, stats, things you can talk about very clearly. I prefer for people that are pitching not to ask me to set up a time to discuss or to be on the show. I just think that's premature in your pitch. You know, that's something that will come later. And I also just want to say, just please don't do cut and paste and like get the name wrong. I get so many pitches where it's like, dear Stephanie, dear Tom, dear whatever, you know, and it's like, that's, you know, immediately I'm just like delete, because if you can't even get my name right, if you're not taking the care, then I'm just not even going to read the pitch. Promo materials, as I said, definitely have them. Love one sheets. You can create those easily on Canva. You can hire a designer to do it, and just start with something, upgrade. If you don't feel you have a lot of statistics or things to add, just like, I'm a big fan of the start ugly idea. So Chris Krimitsos, he's the host and producer of PodFest, which is one of the big podcasting conferences. He's a friend of mine, and he wrote a book called Start Ugly, because he started a first conference and it was literally like at an Elks Lodge or something. It was terrible, you know, and like now it's like he has one of the biggest conferences ever. So basically just start, you know, create your promo materials, whatever, and then just upgrade. Don't wait until it's perfect to start. So I mentioned start, upgrade, and then how to track bookings. Now this is really important that you do. A lot of people just jump right into like, I'm just going to start pitching and stuff, and that's great, but it's really good to set intentions and be clear on what it is that you're trying to accomplish and create. I think of this as like placing your order with the universe, right? Imagine if you just went into a restaurant and you're like, I just want some food. They're like, I don't know what to give you. You know, it's important to be very clear. You know, you say I want a steak with some asparagus and, you know, whatever, or I want this vegan meal, you know, there's no right or wrong, but, you know, what are you trying to accomplish with media? What types of media bookings are you want to get? Just set that intention and put it out there. Make sure you make it clear what you already have accomplished. So whether maybe you have video of you speaking on stages, or you already have some podcast appearances or Instagram lives or YouTube, whatever, put together a little reel of that kind of stuff already. Make sure it's clear on your website what you've done, and then network and connect with influencers and members of the media. Follow them on Instagram, you know, on Twitter and all the platforms. And I'll just tell a story about influencers. So influencers know other influencers. Celebrities know other celebrities, right? So when you get to one, you often are able to leverage and connect with others. So I was actually invited to do readings at an influencer gathering. And most of these were Instagrammers that had, you know, 10K plus followers. So not massive, you know, influencers, but still, you know, that's 10K people. And so I was just doing readings for these various people. And one of the women I did a reading for, and she was really impressed. And then she booked a private reading for me outside of the event. Then I did this reading again. She raved about it. You know, she posted about me on Instagram. And then I didn't even know this at the time, but she's good friends with 𝗟𝘂𝗿𝗄𝗏. So she connected me and introduced me to 𝗟𝘂𝗏𝗏, and then 𝗟𝘂𝗏𝗏 became my client. So it's just really important to understand, like, when you connect with one, you may then have access to many others. And then same thing, one of my clients who's a designer in Los Angeles, like, I had been working with her for years, and I didn't know that her brother-in-law was like a major A-list celebrity. And at some point, you know, he needed help with a very particular thing, and she connected me, and it was, you know, I had no idea. So you just never know who people know. So keep that in mind, especially when you're dealing with influencers.
You know what? I have to share this. A friend of mine, she did a podcast, and she's a coach, and she does coaching on, like, for brides. She actually coached the not Meghan Markle, the first one, the first brother. his wife.
Oh, wow.
And it
Yeah.
was, and so I can't say anything more than that, but I remember, and I can't say who she is, but she, and she did a podcast, and they saw her and went and they researched her, and they did all this vetting, and she coached her as a bride getting ready for her wedding.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's literally just so powerful. This is one of the reasons I'm so fanatical about podcasting, is I've just seen, what it's done and how powerful it can be. So be positive. And I'm sharing this because a lot of times right before something really good is going to come in, you might have a bad day, bad week, bad month, bad year. So whenever I have a tough time, I'm like, well, something great is coming. And I did have that, like, for example, right before I got the call for Will Ferrell show, I just was having a really bad day. And I was like, what is going on? And then they called me. I was like, that's what it is. So now when I have those bad days or times, I just know that there's something good around the corner. And just a note about these big media opportunities: if you get an invitation or if you get invited, to connect, like, just do what you can to make it happen. They contacted me on 5 p.m. one day and asked me to be in the studio the next morning at 11 a.m.
Is the Ron Burgundy one?
Yeah.
Wow.
So literally, the next several hours later, basically, they wanted, and I wasn't even in LA, but I didn't tell them I wasn't in LA. They said, can you be there? And I said, sure. Did I have a full day of bookings the next day already? Yes. Did I reschedule them? Absolutely. They needed someone on that schedule exactly at that moment. And if I'd said no, they would have just found someone else. So if you get an opportunity like that, just make it a priority and make it happen, because you don't often get those kinds of opportunities, that'll come around again, or they won't wait for you. Wow. And another thing, a lot of shows, you'd be amazed at how many of these television shows have very small budgets. And in my opinion, it's better to not get a lot of pay, but to be on there for what you get from being on the show. And if you have been doing a lot of media or something, you might decide differently, but I'm talking about when you're building. And even like I did get paid to be on Will Ferrell's show, not a large amount, but their budgets are not as big as you might expect, even for some pretty major shows. But what you get from it in terms of how it helps your career, I think, is incredible. So be authentic to yourself too. It's, whatever weird person you are. I mean, here's an example that I'm a psychic that used to make my living.
None of the people on here are weird. They're all awesome.
Yeah, but that's my point. Whatever that is, whatever makes you unique, I think whatever makes you weird or different or unique, I think that is awesome. But there's absolutely opportunities for you, whatever your thing is, even if it's like these two things that don't seem to go together, like comedy and psychic, or whatever. That's what it was for me. But just be authentic to yourself, and there will be opportunities for you. So if you want to connect with me, these are all my platforms. And if anyone wants to learn more, my book, 𝗟R𝘂𝗿 Podcast, has a lot of this information, including those different resources for bookings and all that, sample one sheets, a lot of additional information. I do private coaching. And then also my next cohort for my 9-week podcasting course, where everyone launches their podcast together. And we have all these incredible guest speakers. That starts on Thursday next week. So love to connect with you, and happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Perfect. And I'm going to say these out loud because it'll be on the recording. So healingpowers.net for psychic and health. powershour.biz is for coaching. 𝗟Rapowers.net is her creative site. And of course, 𝗟Rapowers44 on Instagram, Healing Powers and 𝗟RA Powers on Facebook, and that 𝗟RA Powers on Twitter. So one of those, remember one of those. That's what you need. Remember, follow those. So everybody, let's give her some love. Did you all learn at least one thing? Say yes. If you have questions, maybe about a specific question, maybe about pitching, what do you pitch? What amazing. They're saying amazing, Laura. What do you have questions about? Fantastic. They're like, this was great. And I told you guys, see, we just started doing these this year, and we have had fabulous guests. I have to say, I've been very blessed with everybody that's been willing to come on here. So what questions do you have for Laura? Go ahead and put them in the chat. Please connect with her, follow her. We want to give her what we can. I just appreciate her taking time to be here. When it comes to, I learned here something she learned. Thank you. Yes, I learned that being a guest can be even more effective than hosting. Absolutely. That's the key here, right? It gets you out there and gets you into the media. I mean, Clubhouse right now, right? That's really a bunch of, it's people getting together and talking. It's content. It's, you get to connect with people.
I just want to say though that I maybe I didn't communicate that properly. I think being a guest is amazing, but you'll get way more opportunities if you're a host. So I wouldn't have gotten all those opportunities if I wasn't a host. Even hearing about 𝗟R𝘂, I heard because of podcasting. So, and even Will Ferrell show, I don't think they would have invited me if I wasn't already a podcast host, because they wanted someone who's familiar with the platform.
Do you think it matters? I'll ask you a question. Do you think it matters then? Because some people are like, oh my gosh, I can't start a podcast. I don't have time. Like, what's your advice to people just to start one and say like once a week, once a month, maybe make it, because there's podcasts out there that I listen to that are 2 minutes long, right? Like,
absolutely.
So what's your advice on that?
I think starting a podcast is just amazing for you and your business. And the key to making it work for you, there's two elements. One is to structure in a way that it's doable for you. So that could be the release schedule. It could also be hiring support. It doesn't have to cost a lot or take a lot of bandwidth. So, definitely if you're a busy coach, absolutely hire, a production company or an editor to help you with that. You can release, once a month, even. You can release twice a month or once a week. I have 2 weekly shows now just because I've seen what it's done for me, but I also have a team, you guys. I have a team of 4 right now, and I'm in the process of hiring another assistant. So like I do it in a way that my time is basically the time in the interview, and almost everything else is done by other people. So structuring that so that it works for you. And then the other thing is that a lot of people have content already that they can just repurpose for a podcast. So it's not about recreating the wheel. Again, if you're on Instagram Live, if you're on YouTube, if you're, if you do webinars, if you are on Summit, yes, you can frequently pull that information or pull that audio and reuse it. So I talk with busy people all the time. They're like, I just don't have the time. And then I'm like, do you do these things? They're like, yes. I'm like, why can't you reuse that? And it's like this light bulb goes off. So a lot of it is about just figuring out how do I repurpose stuff and not, just feel like I'm just adding an extra thing to my plate. And the other piece is that there's such incredible opportunity to promote what you do via your podcast. So when people listen to your voice in the way that they do for podcasting, they start to really feel like they know, like, and trust you. Mm-hmm. And then you can share whatever else you're offering. And it doesn't feel like an ad or promo. It just feels like you're sharing additional ways for them to connect. So it took me a while to figure that out. So I do, for every episode, I do 2 to 3 sort of promos of different things. So, there's pre-roll, which is before the show, mid-roll, which is halfway through, and then post-roll after the episode. You can share, in my case, it might be, here's this new course that I'm offering. Here's a new platform, whatever that is that you want to promote. And that's the way that, for me, it's really monetized. So, again, I have this successful business in a business type that isn't normally very successful. And 90 to 95% of my clients come in through podcasting.
Fabulous. So I know. Well, I just want to thank you for taking the time to come to our, and speak to our group and those who will be listening to this. And thank you all for joining this week. I will take this moment too to the next 2 weeks. You're not going to want to miss as well. I have a gentleman. His name is Farshad. He wrote a book called 2020. He has a story about leaving, I can't remember which country, Iraq, Iran, something like that. Had to flee the country with his girlfriend he just met. I mean, he's got this fabulous story, and now he's doing awesome inside the company and coaching. And then in 2 weeks, Jen Gottlieb. Yeah, I think you know Jen Gottlieb.
Oh my gosh, she's amazing. She's awesome.
Yeah, see, everybody, you're going to want to be on here. She has following of 164,000. So you might want to be on here. she's going to be talking about press as well for coaches in a different way. And she was on VH1. So make sure you tune in and tell all your friends to come back and listen to this. We're doing this for free. We're not charging anything. So we want to give everybody an opportunity to, we just want to help coaches, elevate and uplift humanity and elevate their business. So fabulous, you guys. Well, check Laura out. Thank you, Laura. Everybody is saying thank you, thank you, thank you. Check out her course that she's offering in the next week. Go check her out and let me know how it goes. I would love to hear. I would love to see your podcast uploaded. That's what I would love to see. So bye, everybody.